Have you ever met someone that inspired you? Who strategized with you? Who expected with you? Who led with you? If so, great. If not, it's your lucky day. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle A. Nicholas, and though I carry many titles, you can Google, today, in this moment, I'm only carrying two: a student and a fan. It was just about, I would say about 4 years ago or so, that I had taken on a new role to lead a nonprofit organization. I was only 19 days in when I was invited to an event. I remember attending the event, and the person was introduced. I sat down, I listened, and I will tell you that they shared currency, they shared authenticity, and the pearls that they dished out that day was so inspirational for the leadership journey that I started to take. Now, after that brief interaction, we were friends. She might not know we were friends, but we were friends. LinkedIn friends, follow. Facebook friends, follow. Instagram friends, double follow, but we were friends. Not to mention that we just met, but we were friends. This inspiration, this life changer, this force, this leader is a senior client advisor at Morgan Stanley. In her 30-plus year career, she has had extensive industry experiences in various sectors, including technology, retail, media, and more. In 2013, she was appointed by President Barack Obama to chair the National Women's Business Council. She has won and been recognized so many times. The list is long, but again, we will Google. Prior to joining Morgan Stanley, she has achieved so much academically and has been recognized through various honorary doctorates. But what you'll know about her is even more powerful right now. She is actively involved in her community. She sits on various boards, including the board of directors of the Walmart Corporation and MetLife. Multifaceted in every way, she was the co-chair of the National Social Action Commission of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and many others. Oh, and there's just one other thing. She can sing! She is also a singer who has sold out concerts at the Apollo Theater and Carnegie Hall, and has released 4 gospel CDs. Not to mention, just this little piece, she is an internationally renowned public speaker and the author of books Strategize to Win, Expect to Win, and the book that you received today, Lead to Win. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join me in welcoming my long, long friend that I just met, Carla A. Harris.
There's a fire burning deep, don't let it die. So just begin and expect to win. You can win.
Well, good afternoon, Nonprofit Leadership Symposium Summit 2023. Michelle, thank you for that amazing introduction. And I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's such an honor and privilege to be here. And I want to thank Tracy Alexander and your leadership for inviting me to be here and to spend a few minutes speaking with you, talk about something I love, love, love talking about. I like to call it Carla's Pearls, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman and a woman of color on Wall Street as of this summer for 36 years. I dare say that I have learned a few things about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And frankly, that's what the pearls are all about. And today, I'm especially excited to talk to you about the pearls of intentional leadership. You see, in the fourth quarter of 2018, I had this aha moment that we were in a very different leadership context than the one that I had built my career in. You see, I built my career in the late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s as I walked out of Harvard Business School in 1987. And leadership backdrop was the my way or the highway type leadership backdrop. Y'all know the joke. If your boss says jump, your answer is how high? You say jump to a millennial, they're going to say why. So, and millennials and Zers are in a very different place than those of us who are boomers and older Xers. They demand as table stakes transparency, inclusivity, and feedback. And let's face it, if you are a boomer or older Xer, you didn't get a lot of feedback along your career journey. You were told, keep your head down, work really hard. If you don't get fired, you know you're doing okay. But that kind of leadership style will never prevail in today's environment. I also realized that growing up in financial services, that I was growing up in a producer culture, which means if you are an outstanding producer, you are compensated not only with an outsized number, but promotions and titles and seats of authority and leadership without any thought as to whether or not you're the kind of person that could motivate and inspire people to deliver beyond that which they thought they could do. Yet, that's exactly the context that we find ourselves in now as millennials and Zers are now the dominant population in the workforce. And here's the other conundrum. Most people lead the way they were led. So you now have a major mismatch with folks who are boomers and older Xers who grew up with a very different leadership context now being tasked with motivating and inspiring those who have very different demands. Now you layer on a global pandemic. You layer on the social unrest on the back of racial inequities that we've seen for centuries, frankly, in this country and actually around the world. Now you have a powerful shift. There's been two powerful shifts that have happened over the last 3 years. The first has been the amplification of voice and choice. The second has been the change in the contract between employer and employee. Now, people are voicing their requirements to be in any environment. We've been talking for the last 3 years about the Great Resignation. With all due respect, I haven't called it the Great Resignation. I call it the Great Contemplation. People had an opportunity to be at home and ask themselves the questions, do I like my job? Do I like my boss? Am I getting paid what I'm supposed to get paid? Do I like the career platform? Do I like the trajectory? And in many cases, without the distraction of walking in the building, without the distraction of busyness, they came to very different conclusions. Well, I think that the unlock is frankly leadership. And let's talk about the change in the contract between employer and employee. It used to be, as the employer, I could tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, and how to show up to do it. Well, Over the last couple of years, we've seen industry after industry have record years. So it doesn't really hold water in the argument that you have to be in the seat in order to do the job when 90% of the people were not in the seat. I couldn't really tell you where to do it. You could do it from home. You could do it in your bedroom. You could do it at the beach. I couldn't tell you when to do it. It didn't have to be done from 9 to 5. It could be done at 2 a.m. It could be done at 5 a.m. I really couldn't tell you how to do it because I couldn't stand over you now and make sure that you weren't serving, that you were actually doing the job. You know, I really couldn't tell you how to show up to do it. Can anybody say sweatpants? I mean, but the work got done. So now that we're in the context that we're in now, how do you have to show up every day to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader? And I argue you must be intentional. It's the pearls of intentional leadership. And you must be intentional around 8 pearls. But before I give you these pearls, I want to cut a deal with you. Now, I just told you that I've been on the street for 36 years, so I'm a seasoned, not old, deal-making gal. So the deal that I want to make with you is that I will agree to tell you exactly how it is, straight no chaser, if you will agree to ask me any questions that are on your mind when we get to the Q&A. Do we have a deal? Okay, and I also guarantee you there are no questions that you could ask me where I will not be able to give you a prescriptive answer. And if you don't believe me, try me when we get to the Q&A. First pearl that I will leave you with is the authenticity pearl. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And the day that you received your respective positions, somebody else didn't get the job because you were the best person for the job. So the last thing any of us should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. Anytime that you're trying to speak or behave in a way that is inauthentic to who you really are, that's when you create competitive disadvantage, because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your client or your colleagues are saying, but they are not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to demonstrate that quick twitch response, and valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with the person on the other side of the conversation. As quiet as it's kept, I've learned after 3.5 decades on the street that most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their skin, they will gravitate towards you. They absolutely want some of that. Your success, like mine, depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships. Well, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self into that environment. When you bring your authentic self into that environment, people trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. This was a very interesting pearl for me to acquire. As you heard from Michelle, I am a singer. I have done 5 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall and 2 at the Apollo and 4 CDs. But I will tell you that when I started in this business as an investment banker, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, quantitative, analytical investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. I didn't want anybody to talk about that until I saw clients' reaction. Because, of course, against all of my objections, my colleagues would take me to the room to pitch a piece of business and say, "Oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker. But what you really ought to know about Carla is she's an amazing gospel singer. She sung at Carnegie Hall and Radio City and Lincoln Center." And I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw that client's reaction. "Oh, you're a singer. I so admire people who can sing. And I personally love to sing, but my family won't let me sing in the shower. And maybe you could talk to my daughter about how she integrates her love of the arts in her academics." And there we were, having the 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me, Leadership Summit? The meeting before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens, because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in a room with Carla Harris, the banker, So I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO that afternoon. So now, whenever I go into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior. Carla Harris, the investment manager. Carla Harris, the singer, writer, the speaker, the mother, the golfer, the football fan. I bring all those Carlas. Because I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and allow me to own the relationship in a proprietary way. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage because nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And if you are choosing to sit in a leadership seat today, it is imperative that you bring your authentic self into that seat. Why? Because those who are working with you, notice I said with and not for, those who are working with you will not bring their authentic selves into that environment. And anytime any of us is in an environment where we can be who we really are, we always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in that leadership seat. Now, let me say, most people say to me, well, Carla, I can't bring my authentic self into the environment because they can't take real me. Here is how you bring all of you into any environment. First, know who you are. And I don't say that lightly because before the pandemic, we were all running around so much so that many of us, including me, forgot to stop and say, who am I today relative to who I was in 2012? Who am I today relative to who I was in 2015? If you haven't done that recently, you must take the time to say, who am I today? Because there's not a person on the planet that hasn't been impacted directly or indirectly by the pandemic crisis. So number one, know who you are. Number two, understand that we are all multifaceted. There is not just one you. There is an argumentative you. There's an intellectual you. There's an inquisitive you. There's a frivolous you. We're all multifaceted. So embrace those facets and own that. And the third key to bringing all of you into any room is now you relax. Now you can relax and walk into any environment and feel the energy and decide in that moment which facet of you will authentically connect with that person on the other side of the conversation. The 15 people in the boardroom or the 1,000 people in the auditorium, you will be able to feel immediately which facet will authentically connect with whatever and whoever that audience might be. But it is critical that you get comfortable bringing all of you into the environment. I will tell you that when we went into this shelter-in-place protocol, my phone began ringing off the hook, hearing from people who were in the C-suite across all industries. And the questions that I received, how do I lead in this moment? How do I motivate and inspire my people? We still have to make the quarter, and we're not in the same place. How do I help people negotiate the personal and the professional when it's all happening in the personal context? And I will tell you, call after call, I was clutching my pearls because I heard fear. I heard fear. I said, oh my goodness, he's afraid. She's scared. And I realized why. Because if you were like me, building a career in the late 80s, early 90s, 2000s, there was a prescription for how you got to the top. And if you followed the prescription, you pretty much got to the top. And it never required you to bring your authentic self into that environment. But now we were in a moment where your authenticity was required. It was being demanded by those who work with you. And many people were afraid of what that would mean and frankly didn't even know how to do that. If you're going to choose to sit in that leadership seat today, the constituency that you are leading, they are looking for you. And they will take their cues from you. And I don't know about you, but I see people far more clearly today on Zoom than I do when I was going to somebody's office. You see, when I'm going to CEO's office, I got to get in the elevator. I got to go all the way to the 40th floor. I got to interact with the executive assistant. There's all these things that are happening that can be distracting from really going in there and being intentional about my objectives and about the conversation. But when we're all on a Zoom, there's a measure of equity. We're all in a box. There's a measure of equity, and people see you differently, even with that background and the blur. People see you differently. So your authenticity is demanded in the context that we're in now if you're going to choose to lead. The second role of intentional leadership is building trust. We are in an environment where innovation is the dominant competitive parameter across all industries. I can't think of one situation where innovation is not the dominant competitive parameter. You all have seen it. Even if you have been in an agency or an organization for 30 years, you cannot deny the change that is upon us today. And every leader understands that you cannot do it alone. You will need somebody else's intellect, somebody else's experience, and access to somebody else's network. In order for your teams to give you the benefit of their best thinking, allow you to leverage their previous experience, and allow you into their network, and everybody has a network, they must trust you. So the question is, how do you build trust? And after 36 years as a customer gal, I will tell you that the way that you build trust is that you simply deliver over and over and over again. I want to challenge you right now to think about the people in your personal life that you trust. Maybe you're thinking about the people that are taking care of your kids. Maybe you're thinking about the folks that are looking after your parents. Maybe you're thinking about that one person, the only person you get near your hair with a pair of shears. Maybe you're thinking about that one restaurant that every time it's important, you go there because you know the food is outstanding and the service is impeccable. Why do you trust them? Because they have delivered over and over and over again. Whenever I'm trying to build a relationship with a client, I try to think of 4 things that I can do for them before I ever ask for anything. What else have I learned after 36 years on the street? People will always tell you what they value. They will always tell you what they value. You need only ask the question and create the space where they will define that which they value, and then you can strategize on how you deliver on that value proposition. I'll give you a simple example. I'm talking to a prospective client. They're going on and on and on about how much they love running. And I'm thinking, how can I deliver on that value proposition? So I find an article. I send them the article and say, hey, by the way, there's a great article that talks about how you can increase your endurance. I thought you might like that. Oh, you're running in the Berlin Marathon? I have a group of friends that are already there. Let me connect you so that when you land, there's a community that you can engage with. 2 most important words in today's business ecosystem: community and engagement. And I also understand that there's currency in connections. Oh, by the way, have you tried the new Nike shoe? I understand it has unbelievable support. I have a friend that works at Nike. They'll walk you through the attributes of the shoe. Oh, by the way, do you have a good orthopedic surgeon? Every runner needs to have an orthopod on speed dial. 4 things that I can do before I ever ask for anything. By the time I asked for a piece of business, the client said, well, you know, Carla, I wasn't thinking about giving Morgan Stanley any of this business, but you've done A, you've done B, you've done C, you've done D. Maybe I'll give you guys a little piece of this transaction. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all I needed was a little bit of an opening. I can wiggle my hips through the rest of that and land and expand. But they trusted me enough to give me the shot. If you find out what people value, and always ask the question, never assume, because sometimes you will be surprised. And if you deliver on that which they value, then you will have an opportunity to extract anything that you want from that relationship. The third pearl of intentional leadership is creating clarity. Even though I just said that innovation is the dominant competitive parameter, which means by definition you are going into territories unknown, it's still your job, if you choose to sit in that leadership seat, to create clarity even when you can't see. It's your job to define what success looks like. For when you define what success looks like, I believe as humans, you will find that your team will overperform. They will out-deliver. Because we know what we're playing for, I think we're naturally motivated as humans to deliver beyond that which has already been defined. But when you fail to define what success looks like, you create a tremendous amount of frustration on the food chain. You know instinctively that you should be able to get more out of your team, but you don't understand why you're not getting it. They know that you're not happy, but they don't know what it takes to get you to happy. So it's your job to define what success looks like, even when you can't see. If you can't see it for the quarter, you can't see it for the month, you can't see it for the week, then define success for a finite period of time. I had the privilege of creating the Multicultural Innovation Lab, now called the Inclusive Ventures Lab at Morgan Stanley. It's an in-house accelerator where we bring in early-stage companies that have been founded by women and people of color, tech-enabled companies, and we give them three things. We give them cash in exchange for a single-digit percentage of the company. We give them access to a 6-month curriculum that's been carefully curated to help them to evolve from being a founder to a CEO, because as you know, there is a difference. And we also connect them to some of our larger investment banking clients to advance the scaling of their business. And there were times when I was not sure which direction we should go into. As I said, we're the only firm on the street that has such an accelerator, so I couldn't borrow from the competition. I couldn't leverage internal intellect because no one had ever done it. So as I tried to figure out what success looks like, I would sometimes say to the team, here's the problem that we're going to try to work on from 9 to 12 today. From 12 to 2, we'll take a break. From 2 to 5, we'll come back and pressure test that and move on to the next challenge. So even when you can't see it beyond what's right in front of you, define success so that the team can be equally invested in pushing the objective forward. But it's critical that you not be so afraid of making a mistake that you fail to define what success looks like. If you find that you are on the wrong journey, then you take a page out of the technology industry's book. You fail fast. You extract the lesson and you invest that into the next try. The fourth pearl is around creating other leaders. If you are choosing to sit in the leadership seat today, you must be disproportionately focused on creating other leaders. If I've learned nothing else from my time on the street, I have learned that the way that you grow your power is, in fact, to give it away. Give it away. It is your job to think about how to create other leaders. That is how you amplify your impact in your organization. If all roads lead back to you, then by definition, you will cap your success and organization's success because you're a one woman, you're a one man. So the game is to make sure that you are intentionally investing in other leaders. Each of you should be able to look out over your organization and say, that's mine. Yep, she's mine. He's mine. She's mine. You should think of yourself as a queen maker, a king maker, for that's how you amplify it. And I will tell you that this was also an interesting pearl for me to acquire. And there were two things that helped me. The first is that I heard my chairman and CEO say that he focuses on only those things that the CEO can do. If there's anything else on his list that anybody else on his team can do, should not be on his list. Translation in my mind was just because you can doesn't mean you should. Leaders, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You must be intentional about taking those things that help you to cut your leadership teeth, intentionally giving those things to other leaders while giving them enough room to innovate along the journey, because they may not do it the way that you did it, nor do they need to do it the way that you did it. But you must be intentional about giving them those things, because if you're like me and you are a natural executor where you derive your joy from taking things off the list, you will continue to put things on the list to execute. And those are not the things that the organization is looking to you for now. They're looking for you to be the person with the white sheet of paper that can create the vision, that can get people excited about lining up behind the vision, that can get people excited about executing, but not to be the executor. And you have to take some things off of that execution plate in order to have the capacity to do those things. And that brings me to the second thing that allowed me to advance on my own leadership journey. I had to invoke a little bit of baseball imagery. I'm going to say that since we just had opening day. I said, Carla, the outstanding capital markets banker that has executed hundreds of capital markets transactions, that's generated millions of dollars for the firm, she's standing on first base. But Carla, the visionary leader, the person that can take a blank sheet of paper and create strategies that could be the bedrock and the foundation of our growth strategy going forward, the person that can motivate and inspire people to deliver beyond that which they thought they could do, The person that could transform a culture amidst a tumultuous context, she's standing on second base with Carla Harris. You can't get to second base with your foot still on first. You got to be willing to let go. You're going to give yourself the shot to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader. The fifth pearl of intentional leadership is diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you that the reason you must be intentional about diversity is that it will not just happen. We are all vulnerable to unconscious bias. I don't care who you are, where you're from, where you were educated. We are all vulnerable to unconscious bias. And I'm going to give you an example of my own. I just told you that I created the Multicultural Innovation Lab at Morgan Stanley. 18 months into that journey, I looked up, and my entire team was women. All women. Oh, it was multicultural, but all women. Not an ounce of testosterone to be seen anywhere. So I knew immediately that I had a gap in my go-to-market strategy. Because if you have homogenous thinking at your decision-making table, you will have a gap in your go-to-market strategy, which will expose you unnecessarily to outsized competitive threats. I don't need to give you the names of the brands that we all know and love that did not have diverse thinking at their decision-making table when they made the decision to go to market with that commercial. I don't have to give you the name of the brand that we all know and love that did not have diverse thinking at the decision-making table when they came up with policies and procedures that did not anticipate what would happen on the ground in their stores. It is critical that you have all voices represented at your decision-making table if you want to be competitive in today's market. And I said earlier that innovation was the dominant competitive parameter across all industries. Well, let me give you the commercial imperative around diversity. If you agree with me that innovation is the dominant competitive parameter, then you must agree with me that you need a lot of ideas in the room in order to get to that one innovative idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position in your industry. Because after all, innovation is born from ideas. Well, if you need a lot of ideas in the room, you need a lot of perspectives in the room, because ideas are born from perspectives. If you need a lot of perspectives in the room, you need a lot of experiences in the room, because perspectives are born from experiences. And if you need a lot of experiences in the room, you better start with a lot of different people in the room, because experiences are born from people. So you must start with a lot of different people in the room in order to get to that one innovative idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position in your industry. That's the commercial imperative around diversity. And if you're not with me yet, let me give you another thought. When I walked out of the lauded halls of Harvard Business School in 1987, excellence in corporate America and, frankly, global corporate looked like 6 white men at the top. 6 white men at the top. There was nothing strange about that. Pick the company: IBM, Goldman Sachs, GM, Morgan Stanley, Ford Motor Company, Exxon, Procter & Gamble, IFF. I could go on. There was nothing strange. So I knew that as a woman and a woman of color, if I wanted to play, I had to be comfortable being the first and the only in many, many rooms. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not the environment that millennials and Zs have grown up in. They've grown up in a very different environment. They have grown up in an environment where they have seen women lead. They might have a mother that's the CEO. They might have a mother that's driving the highest profile nonprofit in their city or town. They've gone to fabulous schools where there's a smart black kid on the right, smart Hispanic kid on the left, smart Asian kid sitting in front of them, smart Indian kid sitting behind them. That's what excellence looks like. And if they don't see their idea of excellence in the organizations that they're thinking of joining, they won't go. And if they go, they won't stay. And that will now compromise your objective to be the employer of choice in your sector. And if you're not with me yet, let me give you my last argument. It used to be the case that organizations had 3 primary constituents: the shareholders, the stakeholders, the employees, or the customers and the people they serve. And each of these constituents had a powerful tool. Your shareholders or your stakeholders could sell your stock or move away from your organization. Your consumers or your customers vote with their feet and go someplace else to get those products and services. And your employees, well, they could quit. But today, there's a fourth constituent, and it's called community. And it, too, has a powerful tool. It's called social media. Within seconds, you can have massive brand degradation. Within seconds, you could lose billions of dollars of value. So it's critical that you understand the importance of diversity in that equation. The next pearl is around innovation. Now, I know I have beat that horse to death, that it is the dominant competitive parameter. But if you're going to choose to sit in that leadership seat today and be a powerful, impactful, influential leader, it is your job to teach your teams how to innovate, especially if you're talking about millennials and Zers, because the way that you teach people how to innovate is you must teach them how to fail. Because if people are deathly afraid of failing, they will never reach far enough to truly innovate, which will compromise your overall competitiveness. And how do you teach people how to fail, leaders? You celebrate the failures. You celebrate the failures. When somebody on your team takes a risk and it doesn't work out, you must be very careful that you don't have a marked negative adverse reaction. Because if you do, please know that the person will never take the risk again. They will never do it. And those people who are directly and indirectly witnessing that conversation, they will not take that risk. While you must be honest about the mistake, oh yes, Dan, that was a huge error. That one may cost us this quarter. But let's all give Dan a hand because he took the risk. And because he took the risk, we now know the following three things. And use those things to now invest in the next try. But it's critical that you do that if you're going to be competitive and you're going to be impactful as a leader. The seventh pearl is all around inclusivity. Before we went into the shelter-in-place protocol, I had the privilege of traveling all over the world sharing pearls. And inevitably, when I would go to a company's campus, they would say, well, since you're here, can you spend an hour with the CEO and his or her direct reports? And invariably, the question that will come up is, how do you show up as an inclusive leader? Intellectually, I understand it. What does it mean to walk the walk of inclusion? If you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential, inclusive leader, you simply solicit other people's voices. Solicit other people's voices. I'd like you to try this. The next 4 times that you pull your teams together. Here's the problem that we're trying to solve. I'll get us started in this conversation, not because I'm the smartest person in the room, but I'm the most seasoned, not old person in the room. So I'll get us started. Now, Abby, I'd like you to add on to that conversation. Now, Brad, I'd like to add on to what Abby has said. Now, Chandra, I want you to play devil's advocate. Blow this argument up. Where are the gaps? Let's talk about that. And Damon, I'd like you to add on to what Chandra has said. What have you done? You've done 2 powerful things as a leader. The first is that you said, I see you, which means you must engage enough with your teams that you can authentically invite them into the conversation, authentically invite them into the solution-making process. And who doesn't value being seen by the boss? The second most important thing that you've done is that you said, I hear you. Not only did you invite them into the conversation, but you invited them specifically to support or refute the argument that was on the floor. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Everybody values being heard. Everybody values being heard. When you say to anyone, especially a customer, let me make sure I understood what you said, and you repeat it, or now let me make sure I'm clear on what you're requiring, and you repeat it, the person is thinking, he was listening. She heard me. And you have generated immediate currency that you can now invest back into that relationship. But here's the intended consequence of what you've done. You've now put everybody's fingerprints on the blueprint. Everybody on your team is now equally invested in the success or failure of that endeavor. And as a leader, you know it doesn't get any better than that. And then finally, the last pearl of intentional leadership is voice. If you're going to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must be willing to call a thing a thing. And I don't care how bad the thing might be. And I would argue the worse the thing is, the more important it is that you give voice to it. Because when you fail to give voice to it, now you undermine your authenticity that you've been working so hard to demonstrate. You undermine the transparency, which is a critical ingredient to building trust. And when I realize why we fail to call a thing, it's simply because we're scared. Just scared. It's fear. And hear me clearly. Fear has no place in your success equation. Fear has no place in your success equation. Anytime you approach anything in your life, personally or professionally, from a position of fear, you will always underpenetrate that opportunity. And anytime I feel it creeping up the back of my neck, I just remind myself of that old Southern saying, fear is just false evidence of things appearing real. It's really not there. Because what's the worst that can happen, ladies and gentlemen, if you take a risk and it doesn't work out? So you fail. But guess what? Failure always brings you a gift. And that gift is called experience. Now you know how to do it better. Now you know how to do it differently. Now you know how to do it successfully. At the margin, always worth taking the risk. And as I close, while I have given you the pearls of intentional leadership, I will tell you that the strand that holds these pearls together is courage. It's courage. Because it takes courage to call a thing a thing. We've all been in rooms when we knew something should have been said and we simply looked at our shoes. It takes courage to engage enough of your teams authentically to be able to invite them into the solution-making process by name. It takes courage to teach people how to fail, especially people like millennials and Zers who have not had the opportunity to develop that muscle of resilience the way those of us who are boomers and older Xers had an opportunity to do along our journey. It takes courage to be intentional around diversity because we're all vulnerable to the unconscious bias. And when you are working in a fast-paced, dynamic, intense, competitive environment, we will all reach for the familiar. It takes courage to create clarity when you can't see. It takes courage to create other leaders, especially if you are unsure of your own leadership trajectory. It takes courage to engage, to earn, and build trust. And it certainly takes courage to bring your authentic self into any environment, which is why so many people are challenged to do so. But if you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must expect and strategize so you can lead to win. Thank you for the privilege and the honor, and I'm ready for you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as promised, I have time for a couple of questions. And if you don't have a mic, I'm happy to repeat. Yes, ma'am, blonde and beautiful blazer. I see you.
First of all, we drove here from Syracuse, and you were worth every mile of that drive.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate what you said. I'm wondering, though, if you could share a bit about this is a different time in our country, right? So there's extremes. No one seems to be willing to listen. So how do you suggest people approach this time and meet that demand of this time?
Yes, I will tell you, I always tell people, be the example that you'd like to see, and you'd be surprised how many people will follow you. Never underestimate who's watching you. You know the right thing to do. You know how to serve even this environment. And what I've done, especially through every crisis, and honey, I've seen a lot on Wall Street. Can we call it 87, 91, 95, 97 and 98, 2001, 9/11, 2005 and 6, and then the movie of 8, 9, and 10. That was rated X and the other ones were R. But, you know, at the end of the day, I've seen it before. And what I realized worked for me every time is that chaos breeds opportunity. And whenever we're in these kinds of environments, people are distracted by chaos. But if you keep yourself focused on what you need to deliver on and what you need to do and drive until otherwise notified, when we come out of this, and we always do, when we come out of it, you will have the advantage. So I would say to you, if there are people that you want to hire, go after those people, especially while everybody's unsettled. This is a good time to acquire talent because everybody is off kilter. Your competitors are off kilter. The employees are looking around and wonder. Now's the time. If you have the same calm voice that can deliver the value proposition on whatever it is, whether you're trying to acquire money and get more money into your organization or whether you're trying to get people, you have the calm, dynamic, here's why you want to do this voice, you will win, even in this environment. But don't get distracted by the chaos.
Carla, thank you so much. This is powerful, and I can hear your voice. Your speaking voice is musical. And this is not a request for right now because that might take too much.
I hear it coming.
But I want to hear these pearls in a strand in a song.
Okay. I said I would answer any question, and I will. I'll come back to that. All right. I will. All right. There's one right here in the front, and there's a lady there. So go ahead.
All right, right in the front. I don't know if I need a microphone because I'm loud. All right. I have a lot of young employees that do not have a thick skin. Not to me. The people we serve are traumatized and often take it out on them. How do I build up their resilience?
Yes. Okay. So I'm a big fan of one-on-one mentoring, no matter, and it does take a lot of time as leader, but because everybody is traumatized to an extent, given everything that we've gone through, you have to have some empathy around that and take each one of them together and just say exactly what you said to me. Everybody that we serve is traumatized. You think you're traumatized? Well, let's put an exponent on that for them. And if they get nothing else from us as an organization, they ought to get that empathy. They ought to get the benefit of knowing that we see them and we value them because they had the courage to walk in here. Now, I need you to represent that and be there for somebody every day. And even though it may hurt, you shake it off because you're in the position of being able to give and being able to offer, and they can't right now. So I need you to see that. What do I need to do to help you see that? Right? And understand they will benefit because you're saying, I'm counting on you to deliver our value proposition. And our value proposition is to serve. And sometimes that means just being an ear. Can you do that? And if it gets to the point where people can't, then they might be in the wrong seat. And you got to own that. And you might need to find somebody else on the team that can do that and understand that and embrace that. But I think if you find yourself talking to them and training them on how to do that and talking to them about how you did it, and how you built up the skin, as you would call it now, then I think you will find that they'll be able to deliver. But they got to know that you see them and they're hurting too, but this is what you're expecting from them. And I have to tell you, if they happen to be millennials and Zers, they need far more feedback and support than those of us who were boomers and older Xers. And there's no surprise because we've given them transparency, we've given them support, we've given them the extra ever since they were little. Right? You remember when, and I'm assuming you're near my age, I'm just going to assume, but yeah, okay, all right. So we were told kids should be seen and not heard. But what have we done with millennials and Zers? Oh, what would you like today? You can have this, this, and this. Oh, you don't want this? You can get that. Oh, please tell them what you would like. I need you to speak. I want to hear your voice. So why should we be confused that they want to talk? We created that, and we have to own it. And now we got to serve it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, Carla. Thank you so much for your speech. It's being like, oh my God, I'm here standing because you gave me courage to do it. So my question is, and I don't know if you heard the quiet hiring, what's happening now after the pandemic. A lot of companies tend to lay off people, and then the people who stayed are doing the work the people that left company. So how can you stop that? How can you stand up for yourself and say, hey, I've been doing this extra, and I'm not being compensated for and not even acknowledged that I'm doing it because
Yes.
it's just put it on me and I have to do it.
Right. So that's, and again, just like I told you before, I believe in management by walking around one-on-one. You also have to have that conversation, and you have to have that conversation with whoever the decision maker is. And here's the way I would handle it. I'd go in and say, listen, I know that we've laid off 25% of the people. We now have maybe 3 people doing the job that, more than 25%. We have 3 people doing the job that 8 or 9 people were doing. That sounds like a process redesign. Because that can't happen that you just layer it on. It won't get done. Something's going to get dropped at some point, and we won't be able to deliver the excellence that we had. So here's my thought about how we need to retool this in order to make it happen. And oh, by the way, the value of that new retooling and that job is like this. So how do we get there to the compensation number? I'm happy to do it, but we need to understand that it is more valuable, and there's a number associated with that. Right? So and then you have to be prepared to make the decision about whether or not you're willing to wait if it's a situation where resources are constrained and whether or not you believe in that guarantee that when things get better, you'll get it or not. So now at least you've had a conversation. You can get the process because you're bringing them a solution, not just, the problem. And if they don't take it, then you have a different decision you're going to make. All right? So I'll do this last question, then I'll sing the song. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I have a question, as a leader and through fear, when you're afraid to speak up or afraid to approach those tough conversations or just knowing when to say what you have to say. I feel like sometimes especially me, when I try to lead or get people to listen, sometimes I'm so afraid to even speak up to say those types of things. So what would you advise?
Yes, and I'll tell you, thank you so much for that question. I just dealt with that question on my YouTube channel because I collect the questions that people have and I try to put them out there because I know you're not possibly the only person that has that question. So here's my answer, and you'll see there again, is that you practice, right? Because you're not used to hearing your own voice out in the environment. And I don't mean that lightly, but the more you say it and say it in the mirror, the more comfortable it will become, and the more comfortable and confident you become in hearing your voice out in the air. And then you say it. And you may choose to say it after the meeting, or you may choose to say, well, my goal today is just to get it out there. I don't care how it lands. I don't care what they say, but I got to get over that and just put it out there. And you put it out there, and whatever happens, happens, but you give yourself the credit that you at least got out there. Because the more you do it, the more comfortable it would become. I'm going to give you a quick example. Women and people of color in particular don't like asking for the money. Even though, as she just said, we want to get paid, but we got a hard time asking for the money. Well, let me tell you what helped me. My colleague said to me one day, I go in and tell them every year what I want to get paid. And I said, what language do you use? How do you do that? Because I couldn't imagine going in and tell those boys what I want to get paid. I couldn't imagine. But then, here's what got me to move. Investment bankers get paid in a range. There's a high and a low range for every class. And let's just say hypothetically that the range for my class that year was $150,000 to $300,000, right? And I kept thinking to myself, Carla, suppose you don't say anything and you get paid $150,000. But suppose you say something and you get paid $300,000. Is your fear worth $150,000? And I said to myself exactly what y'all are thinking. So I started to practice. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I want to get paid, right? I just kept practicing until it felt comfortable and I had a narrative. And I went in to see my boss and I said, listen, it was really important for me to talk to you this year because it's really important to me that my contributions are acknowledged at the highest level here in the firm. My understanding is the way compensation is set is how the firm does, how the department does, and finally how you do. And while I can't speak to the other two, I've had an amazing year. And it's important that the firm recognizes that. I want to be paid at the top end of my class. I know you can't tell me anything right now, but it was important that you knew it was important to me. Thank you very much. And I got out of it really fast. Now, I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, did I get paid? Yes. Absolutely. And here's the deal. Every year that I have failed to have that conversation, I can see it on the page, right? It's not a one and done, right? There's one person that has responsibility for your career, and that's you. And here's the deal. Now, there's so much transparency around the value of the seat. Every seat has a market value. And you can go to Glassdoor, Mercer.com, Salary.com, and you can get the range of your seat. And when you're going into a new situation, you have to make sure that you have that data, because otherwise you can negotiate poorly and you end up below the market value of the seat. And once you do that, it's really hard to catch up, if ever, right? So you need to know the market value of your seat. And if you find out that you're being grossly underpaid, then it's the same thing. You go into someone and you say, listen, I've done the homework and I know the market value of the job that I'm doing is between X and Y. So we need to talk about, how am I going to get in that range? What needs to happen? Who needs to make that decision? I'm happy to have a conversation with the person. I don't need you to do my bidding, or if it's uncomfortable for you, I'm happy to speak for myself. But if I'm going to do this job and you all are expecting excellence from me and I'm delivering it, then I want the market value of the seat. That's how you have the conversation if you are in it and you poorly negotiate it when you went in it. But practicing gives you some comfort, and it also gives you the ability to imagine the conversation and what they're going to say back, so that you can be prepared. Well, if they say this, I'm going to say that. They say this, I'm going to say that. And then, sometimes they try to stare you down to see if you're going to buckle, right? But you look at yourself in the mirror. So you say, if they stare down, I'm going to look at them and say, but don't move. Whatever you do, don't move, girl. All right. Okay. As we close, I'll get your question. Okay.
Thank you for this inspiring day and inspiring time. Michelle, this is my new friend. Okay, I just need you to know that. You don't know we're friends, but you know we're friends now. I just wanted to ask you, in these arenas that you've been in, shattering glass ceilings, the boys club and all of that, how do you authentically show up as a black woman each day? Because in these arenas, it is hard and challenging to be greeted, and sometimes in space of, oh, you're eccentric black woman, or you are something in addition to, I'm just a human being. I am a leader. I am trying to do my best. But how, or what would you recommend so that our light is not dimmed and our candle does not flicker?
Yes. All right. So here's the deal. Thank you for the question. Nobody can dim your light but you. Okay? And so the key is not to dim your light for somebody else's convenience. And we often do that, saying, oh, they won't be able to tickle me. Oh, let me not, appear so big. Let me make myself small. And, it really grates on me when I hear, a woman say, well, I don't want them to think of me as a woman executive. I want them to think of me as an executive. Or a black person say, I don't want them to see me as the black director. I want them to see me as a director. What do you think they see when they look at you? Right? So never look at it as a liability. Right now you're thinking about it, right, but you're thinking about it in a way. You don't have to, it's not your, she said, how do I help them? It's not your responsibility to help them, right? People have to come along. You have one job, and that's to deliver excellence. And, people say, how do you do with being the only person that looks like you in the room? Well, if you're the only person that looks like you in the room, you're the only person that looks like you in the room. You don't have to compete for attention. Everybody sees you, right? So all you need to do is to deliver your excellence into that expectation. And it's really unfortunate, but sometimes people look at you and they have low expectations. I love that, right? Because the lower your expectations are about me, the more I'm gonna blow you away. Right? So, but you can't consume yourself with that. You have a job, and that's to deliver excellence. Now, gospel singer has to have a choir, and that would be y'all. So I'm going to sing a line, you sing a line, and the name of the song is Expect to Win. As you know, my first book is called Expect to Win, and there's a group called Singers with a Testimony from Brown Memorial Baptist Church in Brooklyn. They heard me speak on Expect to Win, literally showed up to my office with the song. I love the song, I love the verses, I love the chorus, so we'll do the chorus today. So I'll sing a line, you sing a line. Are you ready, choir? Okay. Expect to win. No matter what you're up against. Don't give up, don't give in. Oh, yes, you can. Not fear, but faith. We'll win the race. Don't give up. Don't give in. Expect to win. Go ahead, choir. Woo!